$69,000. Let's just get that out in the open first. This watch costs $69,000. Many of you have asked me to review affordable watches, and I'm delivering. Here's one that's well under $100,000, so bust out those credit cards. But seriously, I wanted to take a look at this watch because I've never spent much time with a perpetual calendar, and honestly, I wanted to get a feel for what a watch has to offer at this level of horology and at this price. This is the Parmigiani Fleurier Toric Quantième Perpetual Rétrograde. This is the second watch from Parmigiani Fleurier I reviewed. The first was the more sporty Tonda GT chronograph. The Parmigiani brand was founded by watchmaker Michel Parmigiani, and in its 25 years has made quite a name for itself, winning several Grand Prix of Horology awards, and even employing the likes of Kari Voutilainen, Stepan Sarpaneva, and Debatoon founder Denis Flageolet. Parmigiani Fleurier is the real deal. It's high horology, artisanal, luxury Swiss watchmaking. This perpetual calendar is from the brand's Toric line, which is their most traditional collection. Traditional and dressy while still being instantly identifiable as a Parmigiani watch to those who know what they're looking at. Whether or not you like this style, it's worth appreciating how hard it is to have a design style that's both practical and original. Let's lay out some facts about this watch. You already know that it costs more than the average American makes in a year. Cool. The rose gold case is 42.5 millimeters in diameter, 48 millimeters long, and just over 12 millimeters thick. At this diameter, 12 millimeters feels pretty slim, which is wild when you consider the functionality of a perpetual calendar movement and the 414 components in this one. A little about perpetual calendars. In horological terms, a perpetual calendar refers to a timepiece that accurately displays its complications without needing to be reset, like almost ever. For example, nearly every other watch with a date needs to have the date reset at the end of any month that is fewer than 31 days, but perpetual calendars, like this Toric, keeps track of the date, month, and even whether or not it's a leap year. So once it's set, you just have to keep it running and you're good for decades. In this case, the Parmigiani moon phase indicator is so accurate that it only needs to be adjusted every 122 years. Hey Siri, remind me to adjust the moon phase complication in 122 years. Thanks, love you. Here the Toric Perpetual displays the most traditional complications of a perpetual calendar, but does it in a refreshingly non-traditional way. Here we have the hours, minutes, and seconds, with normal hands on the central axis, but then things get interesting. The day and month are displayed through gilded apertures in the dial. That's nothing new in watch design, but I don't think I've ever seen them placed just below the central axis. It's strange, but I think it balances well with the logo north of the axis, and the other gilded aperture at 12 o'clock. This round window shows where the current year falls in the leap year cycle. This is 2021, and so it's the first year in the cycle, hence the Roman numeral 1. At 6 o'clock is that moon phase indicator I was talking about. Two of them, kinda. One for the northern hemisphere and one for the southern hemisphere. The text below the display advertises just how precise this complication is. And then there's the date display arcing across the top of the dial. This is a retrograde date complication. Rather than going in a full circle, the date pointer snaps back to the number 1 at the ending of each month. It's the kind of thing I would stay up until midnight to watch. Retrograde complications are just another level of, we do it because we can, and I'm here for it. The dial itself is slate gray with a guilloche pattern like a pine cone or maybe like the seeds of a sunflower. It's inspired by nature's golden ratio and Fibonacci spirals, which are an almost mystic series of numbers. Legend tells that if you stare at this dial long enough, you'll see the exact number of years that you'll need to delay your retirement in order to buy this watch. Contrast the Parmigiani with a more traditional perpetual calendar like this one from Audemars Piguet. I'm borrowing this AP from Time Titans, who has it listed for sale. These two Perpetuals do nearly the same things, but in very different ways. The AP uses subdials for day, date, and month, whereas the Toric uses a mix of apertures and a retrograde hand. I like both styles, but I love that Parmigiani is doing things differently. The dial, the hands, the apertures, everything is finished to the highest degree, as you'd expect. The same goes for the case. The fine coin-edge bezel is one of several layers, and it kind of acts as a textural balance to every other surface since the rest are finely polished. The bezel design is somewhat mirrored by the knurled crown, which has a dark blue cabochon. The exhibition case back gives a view of the elegant engine, the PF333 movement. As I already said, it's made of an intimidating 414 components, including the hand-engraved rose gold rotor weight, mirror-polished screws, Côte de Genève on the bridges and plates and beveled on their edges. It's all as good as it gets at this price. There are two mainspring barrels giving the watch 50 hours of power reserve, which you want on a perpetual calendar. And if you're not going to wear this every day, you probably want a watch winder too. Setting the date, day, month, and moon phase can be a chore. The Toric Perpetual comes on one hell of a strap. I normally don't care much for gator or croc straps, but this one is nearly perfect. It's sturdy closer to the lugs and thinner and more supple towards the buckle. I shouldn't be surprised since this strap is made by Hermes, which actually has a financial stake in the Parmigiani Watchmaking Center. On my 18cm wrist, the watch feels great, despite the fact that the watch head is actually quite heavy. It's a big chunk of gold, and gold is dense. The supple strap and the turned-down lugs do a lot for the ergonomics of this watch. I also think it looks pretty good on my wrist. It's a sizable piece for a dress watch. At 48mm long, I think you'd need at least a 6-inch wrist to consider wearing this. 6.5 would do even better. And while this watch doesn't match my personal style, I'm charmed by it. I like it much more now with it on my wrist than I did by looking at photos. And that's not always the case. I never know which way it's going to go. In this situation, I find the Toric Perpetual Retrograde really appealing. Now, I've been around YouTube long enough to anticipate some of the comments. Too expensive, LOL. For 70 grand, I'd rather have blank. I don't know, a belt made of Speedmasters or whatever. But I don't think that's how potential buyers of this watch think. This is a high horology watch from a small, under-the-radar brand. My guess is that there are kind of two types of buyers for this watch. One, Parmigiani Fleurier collectors. People who know and love the brand, diehards. And two, people with a lot of disposable income that see this watch and just fall in love. So I think the people that may buy this watch aren't doing a lot of comparison shopping. I think they know what they want and they aren't trying to decide between this and another piece. I respect that kind of buyer, and admittedly I don't know much about them. But I do know it takes intelligence, nerve, and maybe both to spend this kind of money on a watch because you love it. Because it represents the height of a craft. Because talented, skilled artisans poured themselves into every minutia of this watch. Because there are very few items like this in a world overburdened with commodities. And because this is beautiful.